going live.
You're live.
You're live.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, Jan and I have had some real adventures here recently. We've become the mighty mole killers.
Oh,
Hunters.
I'd like to hear all about that.
Yeah.
Well, we're not batting a very high average.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah.
They're really amazing.
You lose every time.
In fact, in the front yard, when you walked around out there, every place you went was
Yeah.
mushy.
Probably were walking on foam.
Yeah, which
Mhm.
meant the guy was going back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
It was like a very efficient machine that was designed to take out as much good stuff as he could. But I think it was just one. We got him, and we haven't seen anything about him up there.
We've got it all the
But
time.
last night or yesterday
There's one
afternoon,
right here going across the backyard into the garden.
Oh,
there's something else.
We just
What's-
don't know him anymore.
yeah.
It's just a, can't fight them, just let them go. Well, our problem is our septic system is in the front yard.
Oh,
And it's got pipes and sand, and they can totally destroy your septic system.
oh my gosh.
So
I
you
didn't know
need
that.
to, make sure you take care of them.
Anyway, quite an adventure. It's never a dull day in the neighborhood.
No.
Well, it's good to see all of you. We're looking at Ecclesiastes Chapter 6.
Mhm.
So would somebody kindly read chapter 6? Actually, it's quite a short chapter.
Yeah.
I have seen another evil under the sun, and it weighs heavily on men. God gives a man wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing his heart desires. But God does not enable him to enjoy them, and a stranger enjoys them instead. This is meaningless, a grievous evil. A man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. It comes without meaning. It departs in darkness, and in darkness its name is shrouded. Though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man, even if he lives 1,000 years twice over, but fails to enjoy his prosperity. Do not all go to the same place? All man's efforts are for his mouth, yet his appetite is never satisfied. What advantage has a wise man over a fool? What does a poor man gain by knowing how to conduct himself before others? Better what the eye sees than the roving of the appetite. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Whatever exists has already been named,
Mm.
and what man is has been known. No man can contend with one who is stronger than he. The more the words, the less the meaning. And how does that profit anyone? For who knows what is good for a man in life during the few and meaningless days he passes through like a shadow? Who can tell him what will happen under the sun after he's gone?
Such a good chapter.
Thank you. Father, we thank you for Solomon's writings. We would see in his writings in Ecclesiastes that he sought to get answers to real questions that every one of us on planet Earth faces. How do you get any enjoyment, meaning, purpose, and so on from Earth life?
Mhm.
And we thank you that he had the ability to investigate that question, and now he's writing his findings. And we thank you that he was willing to share what he's given to us here. There's real wisdom here as we realize that Ecclesiastes was a book inspired by you. So help us see what you want us to get out of this and to order our thinking and our life in a way that brings the ultimate satisfaction to us and the ultimate glory to you. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Okay, so let me start first by saying we want to end up today to deal with some questions that I had put in the notes. We're going to reserve those questions to the end. They're really, I was thinking about, they're really good. Anyway, we'll go back to those questions when we get toward the end here. But let's go through our chapter and look at some of the details. But before we do, could I share 2 stories with you? One story I've already shared with you, I think, about a billionaire that we know who put his children in a private school. And he came to the people that were running the school that were using a church building and said, I will pay for it, but I would like every lock in this church to be changed. I will pay for some hardware locks to put into the church so that my kids are safe.
I think you told this last week.
Yeah.
You told this last week.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So the locks apparently were changed. So here's a person that has everything in a worldly sense. I mean, he's got all the resources, money-wise, wealth, and so on, to enjoy life. But his concern is his kids. How do I protect my kids? So over against that, in 1954, I was 15 years old, and I got a job with a contractor. And I was on a labor crew, and there was an old man. Well, he seemed old. He probably wasn't that old. Maybe his late 40s or something. But anyway. But anyway, he was he was not the foreman. He was just like me. He was the laborer. His name was Charlie Day. He never said a word. He knew what he was doing. He was really adept at doing all this sewer work that we were on at that time. And the work we were doing was deep. It was a subdivision, and some of these trenches were 20 feet deep. And they had put shoring boards in and jacks, and it was kind of dangerous. But anyway, I was working with Charlie Day, and I thought, this guy never says anything. And nobody ever said anything about him. His last name was the name of 2 other men that worked. Well, I did find out he was the uncle of the other 2 men. But anyway, that Thanksgiving, I was off at college. And no, I wasn't off at college. This had to be later than 54. Anyway, I entered college after that summer, and I came home for Thanksgiving. I thought, I'm going to go out and see how those guys are doing on that subdivision. So I drove out there, and they were still working. And I saw several of them, and I said, hey, Charlie Day's not here. And one of the guys said, you didn't hear? I said, no. And he said, he died. He got crushed. So the jacks failed, and the shoring boards came. As all this dirt just buried him. It was a 20-foot trench. Anyway, Charlie Day was dead, and so I was really disturbed by that. I thought, I was in that hole. That could have been me. But I was talking to one of the guys, and he said, Charlie was an amazing guy. He never said anything. I said, yeah, I know. He said, did you know that he and his wife raised 10 kids? And the 10 kids were either foster children or, I don't remember the details. They may have adopted a couple, but most of them are just kids that were brought to him. I don't know what kind of welfare system we had in those days, because that would have been back in the 30s or 40s probably, late 40s maybe. But anyway, here were these 10 kids, and he said, this guy told me, he said, Charlie and his wife put a fair number of those kids through college. They paid for them to go to college. Well, Charlie Day was no college graduate, just a laborer. But here was a guy that devoted himself, he and his wife, to these kids. He worked hard and he died young. So I was thinking about the two people. Here's one guy with lots of money, and he can't find peace unless his kids are protected. Here's Charlie Day that has no money and no real resources like the other man. But there was a sense in which there was joy in his heart to enjoy his kids. He didn't have to put locks on the doors and think about, oh gosh, if they're going to the store, what could happen type of thing. So it raises the question that I think Solomon is raising. We can prosper greatly in a material sort of way, in other ways as well, and yet we're deprived of enjoying it. So the question is, well, why would God let us prosper and we can't enjoy it? It seems kind of strange, doesn't it? It would seem like, well, if he let the one man have absolute access to all the money and privilege and power and everything else goes along with it, why shouldn't he have more right to enjoy life? Why is it just the opposite in some cases? And so Solomon is dealing with that question. And I think this is really a good chapter. It's kind of in the middle of the whole thing, but I think it kind of brings to head everything that Solomon's trying to tell us. So just a few thoughts. Under the sun, there seems to be gross deception. It comes from our fallenness, God's curse, Satan's activities in our life. This deception is really interesting. It seems like if we had all this stuff, life would be easier and more pleasant. But actually, it seems like in real life, the more you get, the less satisfied you are. Now, that's not true for everyone. But it does seem odd. It doesn't seem to align with our thinking. But the problem is we're using fallen thinking. We're not seeing this thing necessarily through the eyes of God. So the corrective is, God, help me to see this thing through your eyes. I think that's a lesson he's driving at here in this chapter. We desperately pursue what we desire and come up short with no enduring satisfaction. Now, there is satisfaction in life. Even people that go through hard times have times of great satisfaction. But in general, it just doesn't seem like earth life works the way most of us feel it should. It seems like, well, we're owed more than this. Why are we like this? Why is life so deceptive? We're trying like crazy to get the most out of it, but it just doesn't deliver. This is the problem that we all face. So the world doesn't work the way we think it should work. And by the way we think it should work kind of comes from natural law, doesn't it? Everybody says, well, it's not fair for that guy to die in the trench. Everybody says, that's not right. Or it's not right that the man with all that money should be worried about his kids. The kids shouldn't have to be in danger. That's built into every human being. But at the same time, we all agree that these things shouldn't be, but we can't figure out, well, why is it the way it is? How do we wade through our life experiences and come up with an answer that's satisfying? And of course, the answer to that is, you're not going to find it thinking with our natural minds. We can't figure this out. And that's the problem that Solomon's dealing with. The frustration is real, isn't it? The dissatisfaction. We all have good times, and there are satisfying aspects to earth life as we live it. But this nagging question, why doesn't life work? So I think the summary here is that the great liberating truth is that joy and satisfaction are a gift from God. But in order to see that, we have to put on different kind of glasses. If I wear my natural glasses, my insights that come by nature, and it's a fallen nature, I see things one way. If I take those glasses off and put on those that have an eternal perspective, that is the way God sees things. Solomon's saying that's an entirely different perspective. And I think he's encouraging us to take off our natural sight glasses and put on these that are divinely allowing us to see a truth we can't see without God's help. So that's kind of where he's going. So the real question that's being raised in all of his writings here is concerning the sovereignty of God. He doesn't say a lot about that directly, but he's not only hinting about the nature of God's sovereignty, but he's trying to redirect our thinking to come back to the aspect of the fact that we're dealing with a sovereign God. So right out of the box, what does sovereign mean? If we just use some simple language.
God's will.
All right. Well, it certainly has something to do with his will. Sovereign. Okay, so it has to do with his will. But what makes a sovereign different than a non-sovereign?
He's ruler over everything.
Okay, so
Absolute.
it has something to do with rulership. And I like what you just said. It's absolute. It's the highest. And we could put down all kinds of adjectives to describe it, but it has to do with somebody that's in power, but has ultimate authority and is in charge, can change things at will. That's an amazing thing. There are no humans that have this.
No.
Well, there was one and still is one that is human. And that, of course, is Jesus. But it's something in this case that's only applied to our God. Okay, so let's take a look. This chapter seems to be dealing with a sense of limits. In other words, God is sovereign. He does give unbelievable blessings, but he puts limits on them. So the question is, why would God give somebody like Solomon all this wealth and power, and yet Solomon's thinking to himself, I'm not really enjoying this trip. Now, he understands that God exists, and he understands the nature and character of God, that God is sovereign. But he's perplexed. God, I'm the king of one of the greatest nations in the world at that time. I control everything from the Mediterranean all the way over to the Euphrates River. I'm wealthy. I get tribute from all these nations. I'm revered. The Queen of Sheba came to see me, and on it goes. But why am I not happy? Why am I not satisfied? Why is everything so frustrating? I know you're sovereign. You could change all this. Why don't you? You ever feel like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
God, you say you love me. Look at that. Look what I'm going through. Why am I going through this? You are sovereign. You have absolute rulership and authority. You're the highest power in the universe. Why aren't you changing things? That's a huge question. And at some level, every one of us kind of asks that question. Why me? Solomon was not free of it. He had to face that same question. So let's look at it. Now, where we want to go today is moving toward, well, what is his sovereignty in terms of my life? How does his sovereignty play into my life? What good things can I perceive come out of his sovereignty over my life? And why is his sovereignty limiting my life? Why doesn't he just let it flow totally, so I'm free and I can do what I want to do and enjoy life. Okay,
This is
so I'm
not
not-
our home,
Pardon?
because this is not our home.
Oh, that's a good answer. This is not our home.
I think
He
that
wants us to yearn for heaven.
Yeah, absolutely.
Solomon, his dissatisfaction was that he chose not to enjoy what he had. In fact, the end of chapter 5, it's talking about God giving man wealth and possessions and enabling them to enjoy them. And then it says in verse 20, he's talking about the man who has these things. If he accepts his lot and he's happy in his work, it says he seldom reflects on the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with gladness of heart. So Solomon just was focused on the wrong thing. He was not content with all the stuff he had.
So then the message is stuff may not be the source of satisfaction.
Or his went beyond stuff because
Yeah.
he had possessions, power,
Yeah.
he had everything, wisdom, but he couldn't enjoy it because he didn't let himself, I guess.
So it's a case for perspective. Am I looking at this thing right?
Do you think our sanctification is part of his sovereignty or our, I don't know if that's the way I want to say it. Our sanctification is based on his sovereignty or ruled by his sovereignty or, you know.
Great question. What do you think?
Yes. The answer is yes.
Pure and simple.
He desires us to move ahead in our sanctification. And if we don't, it's not his fault.
No.
He desires that for us, but we don't move ahead because we're hanging on to our way rather than his way.
Let's take some time to look at this
So-
question. Go ahead.
I think that he's sovereign in that he wills for us, but he doesn't impose his will on us.
Right. Yet what we go through in life, what we choose, he's sovereign over it, but we are still using our own will to make the choices that we're making, all of which is bringing us as part of our sanctification. So it's kind of this circle that has no beginning and has no end.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question. Sanctification, I think we all agree, is the process by which God makes us more and more like Christ, makes us more and more useful to the cause of Christ, the kingdom work, and so on. So in Mark 4, there's this parable. I really love it. And it says the farmer went out and sowed his seed in the ground, having prepared the ground, and then he comes back out a few days later, and he notices the invisible seed, having been buried, now has a little tiny green shoot. He doesn't understand how that happens. It happens, but he doesn't understand why. But he comes back later, and then he notices the shoot is tripled in size, and it has some little tiny branches, and it keeps growing and growing. Now, at no stage, let's think of these as tomato seeds. Are there any tomatoes here? How about here? Can you have a tomato when it's only a half an inch tall? Tomato vine? No.
No.
How about
No,
here?
but the
But the
potential for
potential for
tomato
tomato is there.
is inside the seed.
Exactly.
How about here?
That's
Could you have a
seed,
tomato?
not a cantaloupe seed.
So what has to happen before you have a tomato on that vine? Something's got to occur.
It has to grow.
Okay, but what's got to be there? If you don't see that, you're not going to see anything.
Sun and soil and water.
Got to have all those things. But if you look at the vine, if you don't see these things, you know it's not going to produce any tomatoes. They're yellow.
The flowers.
Flower.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so here's the flower. So there's growth taking place, but until we get to some stage, there's no flower. But here it is. So this continues, and now the flower has produced Kroger's. I like these things that they have. I don't like their tomatoes, but they're all hooked together. You buy 4 of them.
Oh, yeah, those vine tomatoes.
Yeah, but they're in the hothouse. They don't have any flavor.
No.
But they look so neat. They go, whoa, this looks good. Okay, so here we have fruit. Well, in this case, the fruit is the tomato. But if we look at that, the farmer keeps going to bed and the next day he comes out and, oh, these things are really doing well, or they're not doing so well. But he doesn't understand why. Now, I remember standing on the steps of a little church that we attended. I'd been saved about 5 years, and I was standing on the steps of this church and thinking, why do some guys have so much ability at preaching? Why do some guys have so much ability at teaching? I met a guy that had only been saved 2 years. He didn't go to our church, but he was out preaching. And I was in a setting where I was, myself and another guy who were not trained as preachers, we had to do the preaching because there wasn't anybody else that was going to do it. But I wondered why. Well, how can Billy Graham be so young and have such a following? And yet there are really old men who have been pastors in churches and they have little tiny churches. And nobody really thinks they're that great in their preaching. And on it goes. So what's the answer?
We don't know.
We don't know. But we do know something. This didn't just happen.
No, God gave the potential.
So God is sovereign over this. But it's a picture of growth, spiritual growth. We're not going to produce the kind of fruit that he wants until later. It doesn't happen the first day. It may not happen the first year or the first decade. In fact, it may take 3 decades before fruit really starts to show. And some people seem to produce fruit sooner than others. But it's really interesting to think about this. Could a person get down on themselves because they haven't progressed as much as that person over there?
Sure.
Does it make us unhappy?
Mm-hmm.
Do we become dissatisfied? This is what Solomon is wrestling with. Solomon is wrestling with natural happenstances like tomato growth, and it's hard to figure it out, just like the farmer. So that's a really good question you asked, Tony, on this thing about sanctification. And I think that's exactly what he's dealing with. He doesn't speak in terms of sanctification. I think Solomon's in the end seeing that he has grown, that perhaps his growth thing looked like more like this when he asked for wisdom. And then his growth started going downhill as he began to experience and experiment with all the things the world offered. And then toward the end of his life, he begins to see the whole thing correctly. Is it possible that everybody's going to have to go through that? When we come to Christ, the day we come to Christ, we're filled with joy in general. Most people say, whoa, this is a joyful time. We think things are very good, and they are. But then you ask yourself, oh, I thought this thing was supposed to be an uphill run. I thought I was supposed to be improving. I thought I was supposed to be growing. I thought I was supposed to be producing some fruit. I thought I was supposed to be more joyful, more happy, and more successful and more effective. What's going on? But once we get it, we're not dealing with nature. We're dealing with supernature, the supernatural. Now, here's what's really interesting, though. Solomon at the beginning knows he's dealing with a supernatural, sovereign God, the creator, sustainer of the whole universe. He still can't figure it out. We have been instructed, most of us, in fact, all of us in this room, we've experienced good teaching along the way. We should be thankful for that. So we got it on the God thing. He is sovereign. He is the absolute ruler. But nonetheless, why do things seem to go downhill? Everything looks so good, and then it all started going south. Less and less satisfaction. Life is more and more difficult.
Bruce, I just was thinking about your illustration there. I think it's excellent because when you've got the flower, you have to pollinate the flower before you have fruit. And that's the Holy Spirit. That's your salvation. Now, what happens to the fruit afterwards? I mean, you could have fungus, you could have no rain, you could have, no sunshine. I mean, there's so many things. You could have
Tomato,
insects.
worm.
Yeah, you can, I mean, all those things are life.
Raccoons eat them.
Yeah, all those things are life. So what your fruit then has got to overcome all of those things to be abundant, to be a crop that's abundant.
I like
So
that.
then what reality did Solomon have to face, and you and I must face it, in our moving forward, in our growth as a fruit-bearing tomato vine? Are we in heaven?
No,
No, where are we?
we're on earth.
Here we are.
God is
Okay, so
sovereign.
we have to factor in, we hit the joy button when we come to Christ, but everything from that point on becomes hard work. And it can get really desperate at times. So what's the answer? Why is it going downhill? If I get the answer right, earth life can become more heavenly. What is the answer? Why are things going downhill? Why does the Christian life get more difficult, complex, less
Because of the
satisfying?
world.
Pardon?
The world.
We're in the world.
We're fighting the world all the time.
We're fighting. We're in a hostile setting.
Yes.
We're in a different world than the one that our salvation brought us into. But if it brought us into this, why isn't it evident as I'm living here on planet Earth? So really the question is, why does God let us do this? We're not going to answer it yet. But the answer is so important.
But we could be going through all of that and still have joy in the Lord because He has saved us and He's there with us and He's sovereign and He's taking care of us. And the world is hard, but we have Him. And that's our joy. It's not happiness because we're going through that crud, but you still have joy.
We can, absolutely. So that raises the question. The minute I hit salvation, I enter a different realm, but I still live in the old realm.
Right.
If I really want to understand all this, I have to ask myself, I'm stuck here in earth, a fallen earth, I'm fallen. How do I make any goodness come out of my life experience on planet Earth? I feel this. It's dragging me down. It's real, and I can't overcome it in a physical sense. And yet Solomon's saying, look, you can have joy. You can have joy. You can drink your wine, eat your meal, and go to your labors and be filled with joy. So what do I need to do?
You gotta keep your eyes on the on the right
Right.
source. If we, it's like, Peter, when he says, let me walk on the water with you, as soon as he took his
Right.
eyes off Jesus, he began
Excellent.
to sink. So we have all these things coming our way. If we get our strength from the Lord, it's gonna be easier to get through those things as
Exactly.
opposed to putting our eyes on them.
Mhm.
You know, that when I'm away from the Word, that's when the world hits me the hardest,
Yes.
Right.
beats me up.
Mhm.
And,
Absolutely.
that's just our,
Mhm.
can't get away with that.
That's
We're
what
doing that.
Solomon did.
Yeah.
He went into the world with all his 700 wives and concubines, and he had everything the world thought was wonderful, but he had went away from the Lord.
So Solomon had to deal with his human frailty, his human limitations that are associated with the physical world, the natural world he lived in. How did Solomon get out of that, the influence of the natural world while he still lived in it? How do we get out of the negative influence of the natural world? We're stuck here. And yet, Solomon's saying you can have joy. But how do we get out of it? How do I'm in it. It's operating on me. And yet, if my eyes are on the right thing, I can
What's
live
going on?
above it. But how do I do it?
Well, just being in the world, but not of the world.
Good. So that is putting a limit on how I view the world. But I need to view something beyond the world. But how do I get into the other realm that's beyond the world while I'm still in the world?
You have to be born again, keep your eyes on Jesus.
And where does
In the
that?
Word.
In the Word.
Here's where he reveals himself. We need him.
Right.
So he reveals his personal presence. I mean, we can't see him. I'm not advocating you can have visions and all that kind of thing. I don't ever hear voices, but we know he's here because he said he's here. So we're living in two different worlds.
Yes, we are.
So each day is a choice, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm stuck here, Lord. I'm a tomato plant with no fruit. Today is fruitless. And God's saying, why don't you view yourself as having had some little yellow flowers, right? And the yellow flowers are now merging into tomatoes. Can't you see them? Can't you feel that in your soul? Bruce, it's your choice. Yeah, but all I see with my eyes is a wilting vine. There are no flowers. It's starting to slump over. There hasn't been any rain for 3 weeks. Oh, God says, well, that's interesting. It hasn't rained for 3 weeks, but that's a natural thing. I'm asking you to see this through my eyes.
Spiritual.
Can't you see the fruit?
This is so amazing because what we're doing in John, my little group in John, is basically the same thing. Say we just finished Nicodemus. He could not, because he did not have his eyes, the spiritual eyes, he had not been born again. He had not had those eyes open. He could only see just the physical. How can this be? And, and then the people who came for, they came for, all their miracles and everything. Jesus to them was just a sideshow, something to watch and follow. But they didn't get it was the natural person that could not open eyes to the spiritual.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Well, it looks like the Bible just repeating this reality over and over every place we read. It's encouraging us to accept the fact that we're human, we're on planet Earth, we're not out of here yet, we exist right here, and this is the way it is, and we can't change it. But we can have a different perspective on it.
Exactly.
But the enemy doesn't want us to see that, the other perspective. He wants us to grovel in the dirt and frustration of earth life. Okay, so that's just kind of a background. So let's look at some of these limits. So God grants lots of benefits and blessings. He's sovereign. He does offer prosperity so that things are not totally bad in our earth life. We do prosper in many areas, but they have limits. So the question that chapter 6 is dealing with, what are these limits? So Solomon goes through and he describes from practical life experience some of these limits, but he's raising the question. First, why are there these limits? And what is God's connection as a sovereign God with those limits? If he's sovereign, why is he putting limits on the expectations we have about life, which natural law in us encourages us to press into? We deserve to have joy. We deserve to be healthy. We deserve to be able to work. We deserve to be able to raise our families. We deserve to be able to be a helper to other people, give. And why is it so difficult? Why the limits? Why don't you open the door, God, and just let us be prosperous? God's saying, there's a day when the door is going to open, and you will. In the meantime, you will experience limits. Now, we want to end today and ask, why is he imposing these limits? Okay, so chapter 6, verses 1 through 2. I've seen another evil under the sun. It weighs heavily on man. God gives a man wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing his heart desires, but God does not enable him to enjoy them. And a stranger enjoys them instead. This is meaningless, a grievous evil. So prosperity may not necessarily be good. Why do we think we deserve prosperity? Think about it from a natural law position. Natural law means that which God has built in to every human being. What's been built into us would suggest we deserve better than this.
Well, we work hard.
A drive to achieve.
Okay, I'm thinking about natural law, stuff that he put into us at the moment of conception. He put certain things into every human soul.
A sense of entitlement.
Well, indeed. And it comes in the thought we're made in the image of God. If I'm made in the image of God, why do I have to grovel around here like a mole? How about the image of God? How about he's put eternity in our hearts? This doesn't look like eternity. This is limited. Eternity just expands forever. This is the deal. We're dealing with God making us in an unbelievable superior condition, and yet we're not experiencing it because we're fallen. We don't appreciate the fact that we have an understanding of life after death. We don't understand the idea of eternity. We're going to die. Come on, life is short, 80 years at the max or whatever. And it goes on and on. But natural law, this which God has put into our souls, is suggesting otherwise. What is it driving us toward? Thoughts of the image of God. eternity in the heart, law of God in the heart. Everybody knows God exists.
Satan said, you'll be like God. Like God is not God. So it's a sense of sovereignty, I guess.
So maybe we're trying to be sovereign on our own,
Be our own God.
to be our own God, and we can't pull it off. And nobody likes to fail. Okay, so we're filled with frustration with false ideas about what we could or couldn't do. So we have to overcome the deception. Well, let's jump into it. These first two verses, prosperity's limits, it's not necessarily good. Why? Well, God is the grantor of prosperity. He does take care of human beings, even bad guys. They get to experience the cool of the rain, the refreshment of the rain, the warmth of the sun on a winter day. They get to eat food, and so on and so forth. Why does he limit it? He's given us all this, but we can't enjoy it. How could Charlie Day and his wife, he's just making a laborer's wage. How did he do that? Why would he devote himself to all these kids that weren't even his own? He and his wife couldn't have children. Was he a loser? Did he die thinking, gosh, I wasted my life?
Do you think it's like the law, like the schoolmaster that drives us to
Yes,
Jesus?
absolutely.
It's the hardships, the disappointments that make us turn to him.
Yeah.
Well, some of us turn to him.
But why wouldn't he just open the door and say, I don't want you to suffer as a tomato plant and go through drought and moles coming in and that kind of stuff.
Well, he's given us reason. He's given us the ability to think. He's given us a soul. He's got even, our spirits may not be awakened, but we're not like an animal. So he wants us to grow in his image, to grow up that way, but it takes our participation. Otherwise, we're robots. Otherwise, we're, like little pets that learn to just, be pets.
So we're not a robot. We are able and required to choose. It's a choice, isn't it? I'm stuck on planet Earth for the time. Everything that I experience on planet Earth is hardship. I'm getting older, I'm forgetting stuff. Some days I need a cane. And it just looks like, this is what life's all about? Well, it is if that's, my eyes are on that. But God said, well, you don't have to look at it that way. Why don't you look at it the way I'm suggesting? Why don't you look at everything that is subsumed under the word HOPE? Can't you see this message of hope? It's everywhere. You choose. So really, prosperity doesn't feel necessarily like a good thing. It doesn't deliver sometimes. And God's saying, that's right. Actually, I'm sovereign and I've designed it so it doesn't. Because I want you to choose where real, eternal prosperity comes from. It's me. Well, I don't think about you. God says that's the problem. Why don't you choose to think about me? The problem, Bruce, is you think that you're God. Okay, So we're dealing with some heavy duty stuff, I think, when we get in this chapter. Okay, verses 3-6. I read this several times and I thought, gosh, I'm not sure I'm really getting it, but let's see what we got here. A man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive proper burial, hang on to that. I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. It comes without meaning. It departs in darkness, and in darkness its name is shrouded. Though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man, even if he lives 1,000 years twice over, but fails to enjoy his prosperity. Do not all go to the same place? This was very perplexing to me when I read these verses. I couldn't figure out what is he trying to say. And I think that one of the things, he's probably saying many things that I'm missing, but the one thing that really comes out to me, no, I can't find it. Gosh, I can't see it.
Are you looking for the stillborn child thing?
No, the burial. I just saw it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Verse 3.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, burial. So what is that all about? He does not receive a proper burial. Well, let's look at some Bible history just real quick. Toward the end of the reign of the kings in Israel, in Judah in particular, it ended with the Babylonian captivity. But just before it all happened, Josiah had 2 sons, and the first one became a king. He was a bad news guy. And then Egypt came in and took over, and they raised up a second son, and his name was Jehoiakim, and he became king over Jerusalem. And he was, according to the scriptures, a really bad guy. He was a bad king. He was oppressive. He was immoral. He was just a bad guy. So let's look at Jeremiah just for a second. 22. Jeremiah 22. And verses 18 and 19. Would somebody read those, please? 22, 18.
Therefore, thus says the Lord concerning Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. They shall not lament for him, saying, Alas, my brother, or Alas, my sister. They shall not lament for him, saying, Alas, master, or alas, his glory. He shall be buried with the burial of a donkey, dragged and cast out beyond the gates of Jerusalem. Go up to Lebanon and cry out and lift up your voice in Bashan. Cry from Abarim, for all your lovers are destroyed.
Yeah, you can stop there. Super. So this is Jehoiakim. What was his end? His physical end? How did his life physically end?
He won't be mourned.
They didn't.
He's not going to be mourned.
No.
He'll have the burial of a donkey.
The burial of a donkey. Who wants to end that way? When we go to a funeral, there are 2 people or 2 beings to be honored. Who are they in a funeral oration? 2 beings should be honored at that funeral.
God and the person.
First, we want to honor the person. So you would speak warm words about that person, the value of their life, the things they did. It's always done in a short fashion. You don't have many minutes to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you speak about how bad that guy was?
Mm-hmm.
You'd never do that. It would be
Except my uncle takes it that it is.
No.
That's true. But even David, when Saul died, he didn't say anything bad about him. So we don't want to say anything bad about anybody, even though the person may be bad. I mean, there were probably people that wanted to say nice things about Stalin when he passed away.
Oh.
I was in a class at UC years and years ago, and it was most interesting. There was a hippie guy that was the professor, and he was lying on top of an upright piano. He had on bib overalls and no shirt and no shoes, and there were two hippie girls sitting on each side of the piano. There were 300 of us in this lecture room. And he said, he raised up on one arm and he said, "Tell me something good about Hitler." This is a professor, he had a doctor's degree in stupidity, I think. But anyway, there were 3 nuns in the front row. And they said, "If we're honest, there's hardly anything we can say." "Oh, no." And he looks at the 2 girls. "Is there anything nice we can say about Hitler?" And they both did this. And he said, "Let me tell you something. You got the wrong idea about Hitler. He had, I forgot how many, 3 or 4 Weimaraner dogs. No one loved their dogs like Hitler did." That was the introduction to this whole course. It was stupidity. Just crazy stuff.
Sounds like now.
But even Hitler probably had somebody say, "Well, he was a bad guy with the Jews and so on, but look what he did for the Weimaraners." But here's the whole point. At a funeral, we do want to say nice things about the person. But what else do we want to talk about?
Heaven, God.
God. And we honor him most when we speak of what he's done for not only our friend who's passed, but what he's willing to do for everyone. And that's a good time to bring in the gospel. So nobody would want to just die and nobody shows up and cares that you ever lived. Wouldn't that be awful? If you died and nobody cares and you had a donkey's burial. Terrible. So what this, I think, is saying is that to die and have an improper burial would be unbelievably bad. But here's a guy that died and he got what he deserved, but nobody said anything nice about him. There were several kings from Judah that were not buried in the tombs of their fathers in Jerusalem. They were really bad. So what is he saying here? Solomon believes that a gift granted, but not with the ability to use it, is meaningless. So what if you have 100 kids, but you can't enjoy them? And you may not be able to be granted a proper burial. It's pointing to the fact that life has some sort of purpose. You have the gift of life, but you don't necessarily have the ability to use it. And the end would be you wouldn't have a proper burial. I don't think any of us want to face that possibility.
I really don't get that because the person's dead. So they don't know whether they've had a proper burial or not. So I don't get why that matters.
Good. Well, it doesn't matter to anybody else, but as a principle, the proper burial suggests that there was some good that came out of the guy's life. But more importantly, why didn't the sovereign God allow the guy with 100 kids to enjoy them? Why didn't he allow the guy to have a proper burial? Most people in the Bible had a proper burial. Why do some people not have one? Why couldn't God step in and make sure that happened? Why would he give the man life, prosperity, 100 kids, and the guy doesn't even have time to enjoy them, and then he ends up dying and nobody cares anything about him? Why didn't God step in? And if the guy is made in the image of God, which all people are, if everybody knows that God exists, they have eternity in their hearts, and on it goes. Why didn't God step in and make it come out differently?
Because he gave us free will, and that person, all people have the choices.
Okay, so the choice thing, we can't get away from
The
it.
choice, that's right.
We must choose.
Yeah.
God might have said, you know what, dear rich friend, if you played ball right, if you'd chosen to see it my way, I think there would have been a nice service for you when you passed. Or I think, you know what, I think you could have enjoyed 100 kids, but maybe not all at the same time when they were 2 years old in the same room with them. And on it goes. It's a huge question. Think of Robert Kennedy. I was just thinking about him. We heard a classical music piece about the 3 Kennedy men. Anybody ever heard the piece?
Mhm.
It honors JFK and RFK and I guess Ted Kennedy. And it was a beautiful music. I think Peter Boyer wrote the score on it. But somebody was with a big voice was sharing things that these 3 men had said. They were all good things that the guy said. But I looked him up. Robert Kennedy was only 43 years old when he died. He and JFK, we might not agree with them necessarily on their politics, but they try to do some good things.
Mhm.
JFK and RFK had lots of money. Daddy made lots of money.
Mhm.
And those guys had lots of money that they made too. So why does Robert Kennedy die at 43? Solomon says this doesn't make sense. If they had all this money and all this fame and fortune, everything is moving in their favor, why is RFK not able to enjoy it? Why can't he be a grandfather and have little grandkids running around and he can play with them? So everything goes back to these limits. Prosperity has limits. If there are limits, there must be a limitor. Somebody's got to be limiting. Somebody's got to be controlling the thing. That, of course, is God. So Solomon is really wrestling with this. But he goes on in chapter 6, verse 7 through 11. Let me just read these without going into it because I want to spend some time on those questions. No matter how much we take in, we're never satisfied. Natural man focuses on ingesting the visible bread. But the true us, our soul, is never nourished because we haven't supplied it with the invisible bread. So that is that which we can try to amass, collect, and bring into our scope of life. But if we're fallen and we've accepted the lie that Adam accepted, that we are God, what kind of bread are we eating? The visible stuff. But how long does it last? So we need a diet of good bread. I like the concept of it being invisible. So we're back to the Word of God. We're back to the realm that cannot be seen and experienced. We need to choose to eat our dinner there in His presence. Okay, even believers are oftentimes guilty. The wise man is commonly the child of God. The fool is a stranger to God's covenant. Believers who are no stranger to God's covenant are often guilty of lustfully searching for satisfaction in the natural realm. So Solomon's struggling with this. He says, I understand the fool. I mean, he's going to choose the wrong things. We understand there are people like that. They don't have any sense. They have no moral compass. They just do crazy stuff. I understand that. But why are believers who are devoutly in love with God, so to speak, guilty of lustfully searching for satisfaction in the natural realm when they have a choice to enter that realm that's invisible? Why didn't God open the door to the realm of the invisible? Why does God let the believer follow their own feelings, desires, and so on, and take the downhill run? I think Solomon was looking at his own heart saying, God, why are you letting me make such stupid decisions? You got to be an idiot to think you want 1,000 women to deal with. So could it be that our earth life then is an environment that challenges us to think correctly, or to reorient our thinking, or to get the perspective correct on our thinking? Man is finite, frail, and unable. Okay, let's look at just a few questions, and let's just discuss them. Why would God grant prosperity but withhold the ability to enjoy it? Just hang on to that, because I want to put the second question right beside it. What purpose is served by God setting limits on our ability to appropriate joy and satisfaction? In other words, our question is, if God is sovereign and all-powerful, he could do anything he wants. If believers are his born-again, blood-bought, adopted kids, why does God let them follow the Solomonic path? Why do we have this tendency? Why wouldn't he stop it? What do you think?
He
It
wants us
has
to
to do
choose
with his
him.
sovereignty.
He wants us to choose him.
Well, why wouldn't we just choose him? If I'm born again and the Spirit of God is in me, I have the mind of Christ, why wouldn't I choose him? Why can I go possibly days without reading the Bible as a choice? I could have read it, but I just decided I want to. Why would I do that? Why doesn't God stop me?
Because basically we're sinful.
So we're following
The world.
our natural inclinations.
Right. We're also weak. We're also very weak.
Yes.
We think we're strong, but we're not. We're really weak.
So being in a weak state, what would he expect the born-again child, the adopted child, to say to his Father King?
Help me.
I'm weak, Father.
I can't do this.
But do we do that easily?
I do.
We set our jaw.
I'm constantly.
That's kind of how I live.
But it takes time for us to learn to humble ourselves
Yes.
to speak with him. Instead, we say, I got to move through this thing. I'm not going to let it destroy me.
Yeah.
Well, God says, fine. That's a good attitude. You don't want it to destroy you. But why don't you acknowledge your weakness and cry out to me? Why don't you tell me exactly what's going on? I'm the Father that loves you. I have every provision to make your life satisfying, even though you're in that crummy setting on planet Earth for now.
Mhm.
Our problem is self.
Mhm.
How does God use all this to help us come to Job's conclusion that he abhors himself? He's not self-loathing when he says that. But that after Job goes through 42 chapters of all that trouble he went through, he says, I've seen you, I've heard you with the ear, now I see you with the eye. I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes.
Mhm.
Why does Job have to go through that? Why didn't God just say, Satan, no way you're going to deal with him. You three guys stay away from me. He's my man. Why did God let him go through it? Why did he use his sovereignty to cause his own beloved children to have all these problems? And in many cases, to continue having problems. It just never seem to go away. Why does he do that?
I still think it's sanctification.
So it's part of the process.
Part of our process of sanctification.
How does it work though?
Well, he wants us to see him. He wants us to seek him. He wants us to seek truth. And we always, as human beings in our sinful nature, we seem to always have to get to our worst point before we do that naturally.
But why do we have to wait till we get to our worst point?
Because we're sinners and we think we can do it on our own.
So who's sovereign in our life under those conditions?
Self.
Self. So let's look just briefly. Now we've been here before, but it's good to revisit. This is our soul, our heart.
Who's on the throne?
There's a throne in there. Okay, I'm a believer. There has to be a command central for my life experiences. Somebody's got to take charge and make decisions about how my body's going to be used in the course of daily activity. Who's supposed to be choosing how I should use my daily activity? In other words, who's supposed to be on a throne?
God.
Okay, so let's just say it's Jesus for simplicity. Christ should be on the throne, but I have a default setting. And the default setting is what?
Me on the throne.
Yeah, actually, let's use the Bible word self.
Self.
Self, my fallen nature. What if I'm not thinking about God? Who's on the throne?
Yourself.
What if I have a high opinion of myself?
Self.
Self.
What if I just don't like a whole bunch of stuff?
Self.
What if I demand that I get my way on injustice?
Self.
Every time we turn around, we're dealing with us. I heard somebody years ago say our worst enemy is not Satan, it's
Self.
ourselves. Well, I don't know if that's true theologically, but it's a good thought. Here's what really struck me. The word reign in Romans, check it out, shows up a lot in Romans 4 and 5. So let's just talk just for a second. If we looked at those chapters, they're familiar to us, I think. By nature, who reigns? If we went to these chapters, what are some words that Paul used?
Self.
Okay, self. What's another word?
The old man or the natural man?
Okay, old man. I'll throw one in. Sin. Sin reigns. When I hit the default, self, old man, sin. Okay, so this is the default. But if I am a man of faith and obedience, what are some words that would probably be used here?
New man.
Okay, so it would be the new man.
Righteousness.
Righteousness. Any other words we might think we'd see there?
Holiness.
Holiness. Okay, so is God going to force me to have Jesus on the throne?
No.
Is he going to spank me and beat me up and say, you're out of here unless I'm on the throne?
No.
Do we have any human experiences that suggest that we really understand the way he deals with immature spiritual beings in their growth to become more like Jesus?
Tribulation, work of patience.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. But do we, in our own human interactions, as we've grown up, say in our parents' household, is there a model that most people experience in growing up in a certain household that kind of is a hint as to how God's going to deal with us?
Consequences.
Consequences. Who is generally the distributor of the consequences
Our
in a
parents.
family?
Our
Pardon?
parents.
The parents, is there one parent that really should be in charge there?
If he's home.
If he's home. Who is it? The father. So, not all fathers necessarily, but most fathers love their kids in a real practical way. And one way is, son, we've talked about this before. It's really not smart when we're having a bonfire with a family and you're doing the marshmallows. It's really not a good idea to stick your hand in the fire. I've noticed you've done it a couple times again tonight. We talked about this last week. Does the father spank the kid? No, he could, but probably he doesn't. What does he say to him?
I don't want you to do this anymore.
This is foolish.
Mhm.
Let me show some scars of when I was a kid. What happened? In other words, there's a patient, come on, I understand. You're just a little kid. You got to learn like I did. I was a slow learner. I'm patient with you. But please, Daddy knows what he's talking about. So what will Daddy probably have to do if he wants that kid to learn without beating the kid half to death?
Let him
Let
stick
it
his
get
hand in the
burned.
fire.
Let him get burned. Now that's natural law. God has built that into parents. Now not all parents do it right. None of us have done it perfectly. But in other words, fatherhood, I'm just using that as an example, in a real family setting is some patience. Okay, you want your will? I'll let you choose. God says, Bruce, you want your will? You started out great. Joy, April 21st, 1968. Everything looked green, didn't it? You said it looked green and you were so excited. Well, look at your life. Has it been all exciting, joyful, green? God, there have been some trials. I've made bad choices in some cases. I've been insensitive to people. Really? Well, look how many years that's been. How long does it take you? I'm not going to force you to be a good Christian. And the reason I'm not going to force you is because I'm a loving father. And loving fathers have enough wisdom to know that it's best to let the kid learn through experience. Now, I'll protect you from really bad stuff. Good fathers say, son, don't go next to the cliff. And he grabs the kid. God will do that. But in general, God says, I'll just let you choose. So how does God act sovereignly? And how would you define his sovereignty over his blood-bought adopted kids? He acts like what?
A father.
A typical nice, loving father, human father. Because the father is made in the image of God, the father has some sense of, this is the way I should do it. The father doesn't beat up the kid. He doesn't punish the kid necessarily on foolishness like sticking your hand in the fire. He exhorts the child, teaches him, says that's not wise. But ultimately, the hard-headed kid, the father says,
Choice.
okay. So really think about how God deals with us. How could this curve be corrected if I'm dealing with a sovereign God?
Keep our eyes on Jesus all the time. Stay in the Word.
Absolutely.
It's, choose God, not the world. But it's a battle.
And here it seems we need to get one thing straight. He is sovereign. He could have kept RFK from dying. They murdered him. He could have stopped that, but he didn't do it. He could have kept Jerry Skinner as that minister in Romania, and there were people that had no legs that do acrobatics. That girl could have been born with legs, but the sovereign God allowed her to have no legs. So what is the mindset for us that are left here on earth? We want this to be corrected. We kind of like to see this. How do I do it? If I think I'm God, if I think I'm really autonomous, if I think I know how to do this, how do I get my thinking corrected? Well, some strong guy comes by and says, "You're stupid, Chester. You deserve to be punished." Is that going to change my course?
Probably not.
I'm talking about inside. Outside, I might say, "Yes, sir." But inside, who's sitting on the throne?
You. So.
What's the only way that God chooses to help us make a course correction and get connected with Him? Is because I'm afraid of Him? Is that what the fear of God means?
No.
He's going to punish me.
You can see the
No.
circumstances, the
But what I-
consequences, I should say.
Yeah,
The
to see the consequences. But a mean guy could show me the consequence of what is it that would move my soul to want to make a course correction and draw close to the sovereign God. What's the only thing? God, you love me. You're not my enemy. You're sovereign. You're all powerful. You could have stopped all this stuff, but I know you did it out of love. You love me. I surrender. The only way we ever get self off the throne is to realize that self hates us. Our self nature hates us. It drags us in the wrong directions. It makes us proud. It makes us want to hurt people. It makes us want to stay away from people. It makes us want to use people. Self is the problem. Self is the default setting. And God's saying, look, I'm sovereign. Put me on there. All you got to do is choose. It's a faith act. But why would I choose you? Because what you really need and what your heart is really looking for is an inner satisfaction, a sense of peace, love, joy, and hope that can only be supplied by someone who loves you. The course correction, I think, and I think Solomon's driving at it, God must be sovereign in our life, but nothing will take us there until we really realize He's not against us.
True.
His sovereignty looks like He's against us. He keeps limiting everything. And God say, no, my sovereignty is a statement of love. You know how your dad is at the campfire. You know how you deal with it. I do the same thing for you. We gotta close. Any thoughts before we close?
That was a good chapter.
It is
Mhm.
a highlight chapter, I thought. Well, let's take a few minutes. We have a few minutes to thank God or ask God or whatever we'd like to connect with this idea of how we get him enthroned as a matter of choice.
Have you ended?
Yep.
Are you done?
He's done.
Oh, yes.
Okay, usually you close
Yeah, I'm
with a
sorry.
prayer. So you threw me on.